Thanks for joining us today for another episode of Boom and Bust. I'm your host, Tony Clement, here at the News Forum where all voices matter. Our guest today has done deep dives into Canada's privacy and data protection practices, as well as the prep work for the AI revolution. Please join me in welcoming Matt Malone. He is an assistant professor, faculty of law at Thompson Rivers University, British Columbia. Welcome to the program.
Thanks so much for having me. It's a privilege to be here.
So I guess the first thing I'll say is just reading up on you and some of your writings, you made the point that the federal government seeks better privacy and data protection from business, yet its own standards internally are not sufficient. Could you elaborate on that analysis?
So last summer, the federal government introduced a slate of privacy and data protection laws. One was a bill to enhance privacy obligations on the private sector, and the other one was a tentative bill to regulate AI. Neither of those bills have gone forward, but one of the things that's really interesting about both of them is that they put the onus squarely on the private sector, and they ignore the conduct and the behavior of the federal government itself. Mm-hmm. So in my view, this is a huge oversight of our current approach to privacy and data protection and sort of emergent technologies like artificial intelligence, because we need to really look at where a lot of the harms with the use of these technologies are starting to occur. And in many cases, it's the government itself where we're seeing problems in the use of emergent technologies or mishandling of Canadian data with immigration, with law enforcement, with border control.
Yeah, can we let's dive into that a little bit more deeply. Can you elaborate on how the federal government doesn't live up to standards when it comes to data protection or AI deployment?
Absolutely. One example that folks are probably quite familiar with is the ArriveCan app, which was a app that was used to facilitate border control, and it collected basic private information in the hopes of expediting the entry to Canada process and helping border officials who made final eligibility determinations to enter the country. So last summer, there was a hiccup with the ArriveCan app where it sent incorrect notifications to about 10,000 people. And I started filing a series of access to information requests surrounding these incorrect notifications. And I filed as well a complaint to the Privacy Commissioner. And I was subsequently invited to Parliament to talk about all this as well. And one of the things that struck me about this entire episode was the complete lack of transparency around the app. Everything surrounding the design, and the use and the maintenance of the app was privatized, and it was all hidden from Canadians through subcontracts that were done by consultant companies acting as lobbyists. So this is a really well-known example. The Privacy Commissioner subsequently sustained my complaint that the Canada Border Services Agency mishandled Canadians' data. I made the complaint premised on my own data, but it was a much broader concern. And this is just the start of things. There are lots of federal institutions that have been caught as the victims of data breaches, violating their own obligations to report those data breaches to the relevant authorities. So just a little bit of helpful background. There is an obligation, an excellent obligation that was introduced by the Harper government about reporting data breaches to the Privacy Commissioner when they occur. And unfortunately, that obligation is only on the private sector. There's a non-binding obligation on federal institutions themselves. And that obligation is to report within 7 days when you become aware of it. But there are a lot of examples where that's not happening. The National Film Board was the victim of an extensive breach, that their second in recent years, that they were 3 months late in reporting. Royal Military College was hacked, and all of their entire network was essentially compromised. They didn't report that as well for quite some time. And there are a lot of other agencies. The RCMP was the victim of a data breach in 2020 and lost 260 gigabytes of data that was compromised, and so on.
Yeah, it seems like there's obviously, we know that the government of Canada and some of its agencies are going to be the target for state actors such as China or Russia, but also non-state actors which may be affiliated with those states or might be other types of criminal enterprises. So this is an ongoing issue. We're going to take a brief break from our guest. Lots to talk about still. Again, this is Matt Malone. He is an assistant professor at Thompson Rivers University. We'll be back after these messages. Please stay with us.